So it kind of seemed like for a while this Kevin Smith He-Man situation did die down. And yes, Kevin Smith hasn't been talking about the He-Man situation too much because he is pretty focused on his new movie, Clerks. I think it's the third Clerks movie that's coming out pretty soon. He just wrapped filming on that, but we still have a lot of people, even mainstream people, coming out and talking about this He-Man situation that Kevin Smith created. We all know the story, but if you don't remember, Kevin Smith swore to us for about 2 years or maybe a year and a half that this new He-Man show, or I guess I should say Masters of the Universe Revelations, because it's not really a He-Man show, even though they market it to be, like I was going to tell you in 1 second, they marketed it to be a He-Man show, but then whenever the show ended up coming out on Netflix, He-Man wasn't in the title, so I guess they kind of had a get out of jail free card by not making this show about He-Man whatsoever. But since it wasn't in the title, I guess you can't really get mad at them, even though a lot of fans did get mad at them. And Kevin Smith got ratioed on his own YouTube channel, on Twitter, everywhere that he posted on social media, he got ratioed, and people were asking him, why did you lie to us for a year and a half or 2 years? And even when Clownfish TV got the scoop that the show wasn't going to be about He-Man, they got the scoop and they got it spot on that the show wasn't going to be about He-Man. The show was going to be Teela's show, and that He-Man would even die early on in the show. They got it spot on, and Kevin Smith came out and discredited Clownfish. They discredited everyone who was reporting on Clownfish's reports because he knew they were right. He knew that if people knew that they were right, that they wouldn't even want to watch the show. So in reality, he had no choice but to discredit them, because if he were to come out and say that, yeah, actually, I've been lying to you this whole time, this show is not even about He-Man at all, He-Man actually dies in the very first episode, and the rest of the show is the Teela show, then people would never even tune into his show in the first place. So what these people in Hollywood try to do now is they try to pull that bait and switch, and that's exactly what Kevin Smith did. And it's not just Kevin Smith, it's a lot of people in Hollywood now, but Kevin Smith did it, and you know, it really hurts whenever Kevin Smith does it, because he sold himself as the person who was kind of anti-Hollywood. He would always go against the grain. He would always go against the agendas that are being pushed in Hollywood, and even call Hollywood out on their BS whenever they did stuff like this. And now that Kevin Smith is actually being accepted into Hollywood, because for the longest time he was the outcast of Hollywood, and that's why he was so against Hollywood. That's why he sold himself as one of us and not one of those Hollywood weirdos. But now that he is being accepted into Hollywood, he is giving into their agendas. He is no longer going against the grain. He is going with the grain because he doesn't want to become that outcast again. That's what happens all the time with these people. They were at one point in their life the outcast of Hollywood, and then they were going against the grain in Hollywood. They were calling out Hollywood on all their BS, like I'm doing right now, like a lot of other YouTubers are doing right now. But then they're accepted into the Hollywood weirdness, and they become one of those Hollywood weirdos that they used to call out all the time. It happens over and over again, but we have someone else from the mainstream that are calling out this type of thing. That's not only calling out the He-Man situation. They did use the He-Man situation quite a bit as an example, but they're just calling out Hollywood doing this one thing that we all know that they're doing, that I've been talking about they're doing. He's calling them out. Let's check it out. So as you can see, this article from Bounding Into Comics says the Symbolic World host Jonathan Pagu, I don't really know how to pronounce his name, but I'm going to say Pagu, decrees Kevin Smith's Masters of the Universe Revelation for perverting masculinity. Jonathan, the host of the Symbolic World, recently decreed Kevin Smith's Masters of the Universe Revelation Netflix show for perverting masculinity. And I wouldn't even say that it's really perverting masculinity, but I do agree with pretty much everything that Jonathan is saying in this article. Let's check it out. In the introduction of his video, Jonathan details what he will be addressing. It might seem like a very strange thing to talk about, this kids show, but I think it's important to understand and to see one of the prime examples of a strategy that I've noticed in popular culture, which is, of course, using masculinity against itself. And I've said it before in videos, and I'll say it again. There is an attack on masculinity, and it's not just in Hollywood. It's in pop culture in general. It's in society in general. There is an obvious attack on masculinity, and there's really no debating that. But in Hollywood, it's really prevalent. In pop culture, it's really prevalent that attack on masculinity is kind of at the forefront right now of all the agendas that they're trying to push in Hollywood. And I'm glad that people in the mainstream are starting to see this, and not only see it, but also call it out as well. It's really important that people keep bringing attention to this. If you have a voice, you need to bring attention to this. And I think a lot of people out there are using their voice to bring attention to stuff like this and other things that Hollywood are doing as well. They're just calling out their BS all the time, and I love to see it. He elaborated, using the capacity, the tendency men have to sacrifice themselves for the world in order to then use it as a trick to replace the masculine with the feminine. And yeah, that's 100% true. It's kind of a man's duty to die for their woman, you know, and to kind of exploit that into having He-Man and other masculine characters like He-Man sacrifice themselves so that Teela can take over the show, and other feminine, or I guess she's not even feminine in any way, but other female characters could replace that masculine character with, I guess, a female masculine character. It's kind of exploiting the male's tendency. It's kind of exploiting the masculine masculine tendencies that males have. Diving into the subject of the video proper, Pagu first notes that He-Man really is an image of hypermasculinity. He's exactly, well, I guess not anymore. I guess he kind of still is, even in the Kevin Smith show. He's just not that prominent in the show. But He-Man is what every man wants to be. You know, he really is a perfect image of hypermasculinity. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think hypermasculinity is a bad thing. But, you know, when it comes to Hollywood, when it comes to today's society, they kind of make it out to be a bad thing. But he then goes on to reiterate that He-Man is used to replace the masculine with the feminine. Pagu explains it is not surprising that every character, or that very, I think they mean every character, would be used to play out the narrative that I've talked about in so many of my videos, which is replacing the masculine character, a male character, with a female character. Of course, the female character has masculine characteristics like Teela does, and is supposed to be a warrior and a badass and a combatant and all of that, but nonetheless, it really is kind of a stepping aside and being replaced. 100%, man. It doesn't matter that they're replacing the male masculine character with a female masculine character. It's simply the fact that there's an obvious pattern here where the male starts off as masculine, and either they get emasculated or they're straight up replaced with a female over and over and over again. It's an obvious pattern, and no one can really discredit that. Jonathan then lists out a number of other films and TV shows where this is and has taken place. This happened, of course, in Wolverine movie Logan. It happened in so many different instances in the past several years, and it's going to happen a lot more. 100% it's going to happen until people start standing up to this kind of thing and saying, you know what, we're not going to purchase. If you're going to do this over and over again, we're not going to give you money anymore. And I think it's going to take a while for that to happen. I don't know why else it would happen. I don't know why else they would change if people are going to continue to give them all this money and they can just do it and not lose any money. There's no reason for them to stop doing it. So it's going to take something like that for them to stop swapping out these male characters with the female characters. But he also says you need to get ready for it. It was happening also in the Loki series. Man, I tried to stick with that Loki series, but up until that finale, whenever Loki, spoiler alert by the way, whenever Loki finally loses to the female version of himself, that's where I was just like, you know what? I can't like this show. You know, this show, I'm going to write it off as a bad show now. I gave it a shot all the way up until the finale, but as soon as Loki lost to his female self, that's where I was done with the show. It's going to happen again with all of these fictional characters. And the worst part is, Marvel and DC and all these other people, they try to use the source material as an excuse. They don't try to pull from the source material and make it better. They use it as an excuse to race swap, to gender swap, to do all these things, to push these agendas. Because if you can pull a female Loki out of the comics, then it doesn't seem that bad. You know, it doesn't seem like it's totally out of place. They can make it seem like they did it. Just trying to pull from the source material, just trying to make the diehard fans happy, the fans of the source material happy. But that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to look for any excuse that they can possibly find to swap out the male Loki and make the female Loki look more powerful. They're trying to do that not only with Loki, but with all these other things that have source material, mostly Marvel and DC, because they are the two IPs that have established cinematic universes now, and they can pull from a lot of source material and swap these races, swap these genders, and use that excuse, use that fallback of the source material, also showing all of these characters with multiple genders and multiple races. Let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. What do you think about the He-Man show in the first place? What do you think about Kevin Smith's future? And what do you think about this direction that Hollywood is going in with replacing all these males, all these masculine characters with these females, and then also giving those females masculine tendencies, masculine traits, all that stuff? It's an obvious pattern in my eyes, but let me know what you think in the comments. If you did enjoy this video though, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter, links to that will be in the description as well. Thank you for watching the video. Hope to see you in the next one.